In Hollow Knight Silksong, there's an area called Bilewater, a disgusting, repulsive land filled with maggot-infested waters, difficult platforming, traps, and some of the most annoying enemies in the entire game. Honestly, the only two good things about Bilewater is the soundtrack, and when you get to leave. It was a war and a half just to get through this area, but Team Cherry saved their best for last. See, at the very top, you find a small arena and are locked in, thus beginning the boss fight. I'm so glad I waited 6 years for this. This is without a doubt in my mind the worst boss in Silksong. There are just so many things wrong with his design philosophy that I'm convinced this was not done accidentally. My point is that he's perfectly bad, which I know sounds like a paradox, but let me explain. I'm sure I'm the 1000th person to say this on the internet, but Silksong has received criticism for its difficulty and quality of life choices that seem to go against the main purpose of a game, which is to have fun. I think the capitalism is quite strong here, as I was constantly snorting rosaries just to keep above the low income bracket. But when it comes to the boss fights, I think there are 3 major consistent issues that I've noticed during my playthrough. And see, with Groal the Great, he harbors all 3 problems and then some. The first issue is the damage. Most bosses and a fair amount of enemies deal 2 masks of damage. Even contact damage counts as 2. Which explain that buffoonery. Dude, I love it when I just graze the left leg of a fat fly and it takes away 2 masks. Oh man, I don't get angry at all. Groal the Great has this issue. It's not the fact that he does 2 masks of damage alone, but when counting in all the other factors, it becomes the biggest nail in the coffin in the long run. And when you pair that with the second issue, it becomes a blood-boiling experience for sure. See, Silksong decided that we're not just gonna have Groal the Great here, because that would be too easy. Let's have a gauntlet of enemies that the player has to complete each time before even attempting the boss fight. That sounds like a great idea. If you ask me, I think there are way too many bosses that have a gauntlet beforehand in this game. At the top of my head, without even looking at the list, I can name the Crawfather, Broodmother, Crust King Khan, and of course, Groal the Great. Now by far, Crust King Khan's gauntlet is the most difficult. You wanna hear something ironic? It took me, I wanna say, 45 minutes to complete the gauntlet, and on my first attempt, I beat Crust King Khan. Which, you know what, it makes sense. Because after a long gauntlet like that, you don't want to have an overly difficult boss at the end of it. At least, Team Cherry showed some mercy in that regard. Not with Groal the Great though. Because on top of fighting the enemies in Groal, you have to be wary of the maggot soup below that inhibits your healing factor. A healing factor that takes so much time and effort to even pull off. It's these hazards that add a whole new layer of difficulty during the fight. The enemies during the gauntlet are of course some of the most annoying ones in the entire game. I have a pure hatred for the dart spitters, which the way I said it makes it sound like a slur, so I don't know if I should apologize. The last issue is the Team Cherry on top for this whole mess of garbage. Runbacks, in my opinion, have 0 positive influence in a game. There's no reason to have them. Think of Elden Ring. They have the Statue of Marika or a Site of Grace right next to the boss arena, forcing us to traverse the same path with enemies placed strategically to block us is not fun or immersive. Here's my rule of thumb. If the run back takes longer than the actual boss fight, you have failed me. Silksong has quite a few bosses with either long or painful runbacks. The Last Judge is a classic already. I've seen people cry about it online, and rightfully so. But Groal the Great is a special one. See, if you didn't know, there's a hidden bench near the arena that you can find, which makes things much easier. But if you didn't know that, like I didn't know that, the run back was even worse. And honestly, I don't know how I kept my sanity. Seriously, this bench is very well hidden. The only reason I discovered it existed was through a YouTube video. I get that this game has a lot of secrets, and a lot of them are okay if you discover them through a YouTube video, but finding a bench that's trying to be near the boss fight, I just feel like that should be obvious. However, this runback still involves plenty of risks, including more maggot water, traps, and even more dart spitters. Even if there is no resistance to the path above, it still takes about 30 seconds to get there, which I know is not as long as the boss fight, but it's enough time to reflect on my life and the personal choices I've made that led me to this moment. It really is a knife to the gut knowing that the pain of a boss fight doesn't stop when you're dead. It continues as you pursue another attempt, and especially when you come back wounded with one less mask or infested by maggots. There are just so many roadblocks that come before Groal that make it feel like a never-ending nightmare. I feel like I'm running in a dream and I'm just getting nowhere. Keep in mind, my friends, I haven't even mentioned Groal himself. I've only talked about design choices that happen before the fight even begins, except for the damage aspect. So how is Groal the Great when I get a chance to actually fight him? He's annoying but simple. He only has like 4 attacks. There's the Acid Spit, the Vacuum Cleaner, the Blasting Spirits, and of course his body itself as a hitbox that he will purposely try to smother you with. So I'm counting that. Again, it's not hard, but when there's pressure on the line for repeating that gauntlet and with how reckless I am during these games, I've gotten sent back to the bench more times than I would like to admit. All these attacks, by the way, can be avoided by, coincidentally, diving headfirst into the maggot soup. You're untouchable there. Pick and choose your openings, swim into the corner when the minions arrive, and you're basically good. Of course, I learned about this after my playthrough, but if you're fighting him now or will later, there you go. So here's where we get to the point I'm trying to make here. I've established that Groal the Great is terrible in almost every case of boss design, and that it was done intentionally. There's no way that Team Cherry made Groal the Great and thought, whoops, let's not fix that. So why? I think the reason is, every game needs their scapegoat. Even if it wasn't intentional, every great game has that one terrible boss design that sparks discussion in the community. It makes them memorable, and therefore makes the entire game memorable. It doesn't even have to be unanimous, because even though I'm sure most of you agree that Groal is the worst boss, some of you may think the Savage Beastfly is worse, or the Brother Guys, or Father of the Flame. It doesn't matter because it's still the scapegoat, it just looks a little different from mine. But imagine the alternative if Groal was just decent, or even a good boss. There are plenty of great bosses in Silksong, plenty of decent ones, so he would get lost in the mix pretty quickly. The absolute trash bosses, however, are far and few in between, which makes them stand out and adds great contrast to the best fights in the game. Groal the Great is ironically brilliant, not just because he's bad, but also because of where he's located. Again, you may think differently, but Bilewater is the worst area in Silksong. I've seen arguments for Sinner's Road, and it's not hard to see why. Those roach dogs will make you change religions. But Bilewater? It's essentially any of the poison swamps from the Dark Souls games made vertical. And on top of that with difficult platforming. Groal the Great is the pinnacle of Bilewater. He's not just the boss here. He embodies this whole area into one encounter. By the time you reach him, you're already exhausted, frustrated, and probably at a higher blood pressure than when you first started. And then, instead of rewarding your perseverance with a satisfying duel, the game hands you a gauntlet and this fat frog thing or whatever it is. It's the perfect thematic conclusion. He's not the boss you want after that climb, but he's absolutely the boss you have. Sometimes being the worst isn't a flaw, it's the point. Now, after doing some reflection, I don't think Groal is all that bad, especially when compared to the other games I've played. I mean, have you fought against the helicopter in Devil May Cry 2? And also keep in mind, I'm a bit sadistic, okay? I enjoy difficult encounters and difficult games in general. I've played every well-known FromSoft game and plenty of Souls-likes, including my most recent adventure, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. And if you're curious about the comparison, Fallen Feathers is leagues more difficult than Silksong. Some of the best bosses in the game had way more frustration attached to it than Groal ever did, easily. Now, this doesn't erase the fact that Groal the Great is a bad boss, but at least it gives purpose to his design. The bad boss of any video game takes the fall, so that the others may rise up in popularity, thus giving the game way more buzz than if the bosses were all good. There's not much discussion to be had if all the bosses are good, and the community agrees with that. At the moment, I hated this boss. Now, I actually kind of respect it. But if I replay this game, will I hate going through this area and this boss again? Absolutely. I think it's the fact that every bad boss, intentional or not, has an important role to play. The best bosses in the game are still the best, but having that juxtaposition between a terribly designed boss and the best highlights both sides. This only works though if the rest of the game is good, and Silksong is more than just good, it was phenomenal. My first playthrough took me about, I would say, 40 hours all the way to Act 3's final boss. Silksong has such a unique roster that challenges one aspect of their gameplay loop, or has like an equilibrium between all the mechanics of the game. There is plenty more to talk about whether I focus on Silksong's overall boss design or link it with other games, and see how it compares. Regardless, I thank you for watching, I know I said I was going to take a break from YouTube, but Silksong was so good, and I was so passionate about making a video that I just had to. Nothing crazy, just a short essay on a specific boss. But if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care everyone, and of course, stay safe.